Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today for our Facebook Live. I welcome back all of you who have joined me in the past, and then for those of you who are new, thanks for being here. As I always say, if you ended up in front of me, tuned into this, something bigger than us brought us together, right? There's 100 other things you could be doing right now or places you could be, but you're here. So whether it's live or you tune into this broadcast after the fact, just know that you were guided, and hopefully something that you need answered, we will be able to address today. So Facebook Live, the format we're doing is basically you are welcome to write in whatever questions you might have. I would just ask that they're more universal in nature so that we can all benefit versus we're not doing readings on this. From time to time, I do get psychic hits, and I will share that with you if it comes up as I'm answering the question. So anyways, we'll get started now. And what's the first question?
Yeah, the first question comes from Sharon, and she knows that you've talked a little bit about like what happens in the afterlife, how people kind of describe their heaven on earth and things like that, but she's wondering if you can delve a little bit deeper and talk more about if they're living parallel lives to us or what they're doing kind of in their day-to-day.
Right. Okay. So what happens in the afterlife, this is really a case-by-case explanation or experience for each soul, because just like we each have very different earthly lives, because we have free will, we have different preferences. Same goes with when we pass away. So when we leave this realm for the next realm, we pick up where we left off. And there's going to be some souls that just really worked hard. They fulfilled their soul's purpose while here, and they just want a breather. And so they want to kick their feet up and relax. And so when I do readings, it will come through that they're up there playing a game of cards, or they're on a golf course, or they're laying at the beach, okay? They can create those replicas of what brought them joy and was fun and rejuvenating while here in this world. There's going to be a lot of souls who maybe do that for a moment, or they spend time restoring their light and healing their energy, and then they get back to work. So a lot of times I'll see a school desk, and that's my sign to know that they're up there in some classroom, so to speak, picking up where they left off, doing the work to learn their lessons, work with their spirit guides, work with their soul groups, the souls that they've incarnated in and out of different lifetimes with, maybe this past life, on lessons they, didn't fully get right and maybe need to return one day to relearn. Some souls are up there in the higher heavens. They are working with spirit guides and higher beings of light like ascended masters to, really help on a more universal level, whether they're working as guides from that realm to work with people in this realm. So there's all sorts of scenarios. That honestly is a book, but hopefully that gives you an idea of the different things that, we can do once we leave this realm.
Thank you. So this question we got from a couple of people in kind of similar forms, from Rosen and Yvonne, and they want to know, do we have to go through different levels to get to heaven? And do we reconnect with our family units and soul groups, or do we only reconnect with family and soul groups once we pass, basically,
right?
Is there an order?
Right.
How does it go?
Okay, so again, this is there's not one set path, one set way from my experience. There is a general process that happens from what spirits have relayed to me, and that is when you die, you exit the body. And what they've shown me is you generally exit, we're going to start from 101. You generally leave from the soul center, which is right here in between the heart and the throat, or from the crown, okay? And people have told me they'll be sitting there in hospice and they will see energy move out, from an area or spark of light. And so you leave, and then your soul, your essence that doesn't die, it just naturally starts ascending up, okay? And the vibration raises higher. And so you're going to this higher vibe place, which we call the astral plane. The astral plane is the waiting room between heaven and earth, okay? And that's where you're greeted by It depends on how evolved you are. Some souls don't need a whole welcoming committee. They just need their guardian angel or a specific guide that's assigned to greet them. Some souls really do need that, kind of family reunion experience where they're seeing familiar faces, so they're not afraid and they go to the light. So you've heard about go to the light, the tunnel. That's the common experience. And so whatever you want to call it, you gravitate to that. You're brought in by loving beings. Again, depends on who it is for you. And then from there, you either spend some time. I've had a lot of readings where they're talking about they spent a good Earth year just soaking up the homecoming and having a big party and reconnecting and so pleasantly surprised to see, Uncle Bill and Aunt Judy. And so this stuff comes through readings. But a lot of souls who are pretty advanced, they don't need a whole lot of time doing that. They love it. They get to connect, say their hellos. And then they're like, I'll be back. I'm going to go now meet with my council. And so we all have a council in heaven that's made up of usually anywhere from 3 to about 12 different master guides that we sit with and do a life review. So most souls get on with that process, and we play judge and jury. They're not judging us, but they're holding us accountable, and they're sitting there with us, reminding us with the book of life open, our script, our blueprint for the lessons we agreed to take on and the karma that we needed to work out in that recent past life. And so we sit there and we work through it and we figure out, where we went wrong, where we went right, what we could do better next time, and so forth. And so then after that, we oftentimes go to our soul groups. And so our soul groups, there are soul families. And some of those souls are still incarnated in this realm, but there's a lot of them that are up there and from past lives, not just this most recent one. And so you spend time just connecting, and then from there it goes on and on and on, because you can either, again, go to your classroom and do work, go and be trained as a guide so that you can work with your living loved ones, or go have some fun and just play. So
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Natalie asked, do we have the same team spirit throughout our life, or do they change as we progress?
I love that you asked that question because I just went through this. Like it or not, I was, okay, so yes, our guides change. Yes, they change. You have many, many, many guides that come and go throughout your life. You will always have a permanent guardian angel. Some people have more than one. Usually it's one, okay, with you from birth until death. Think of your spirit guides like your teachers throughout, K through 12. You don't stay with one teacher. But, in the beginning years, elementary school, you usually have one teacher throughout the day. As you get older into middle school and high school, you have many teachers throughout the day. So as you move through this journey, you're going to have many teachers or spirit guides. And oftentimes you have several working with you at any one time. And they're working with you on different assignments, right? So just like in school, you have math and English and, gym and music. And you're going to have guides working with you on different topics, lessons that you need to go through. And so I just went through this where I knew my guides were shifting. I could tell, but I wasn't certain. And I went to see a healer, a shaman. And she said, your guides are changing. And that for me, sometimes you just need someone outside of yourself to validate it, even me, to know I wasn't, manufacturing this from a mind level. And so I said, I know, but I'm in a void and I can't figure out what's going on because I feel like my old guides moved out, but my new ones haven't moved in. She said, well, then maybe you should journey over there to the out of body and go see him. I'm like, well, how do I do that? She laughed. She couldn't believe I've never done this. But no, I'd never done this. She took me on a shamanic journey. And so for about a half hour, she sat there and she did her, ritual of drumming. And she told me exactly what to do. And I left my body and she told me who to go and meet and ask them if they were my guides. And it was just an amazing experience. And I met these 3 guides. And I came back and they had shown me a snake and a rose and these different signs. Well, I didn't tell her anything. And at the end, she said, Rebecca, there's something with the jungle and a snake and something about you need to buy yourself roses. And I'm thinking, okay. So it was just further confirmation that I went on this journey. It was very real. And she was able to validate, because on some level she was, going through the process with me. So anyways, if you feel like you need to meet your spirit guides, and that might actually have been a question that somebody wrote in on how to meet your spirit guides, but you can do a shamanic journey where somebody leads you through it, or you can do your own meditation. There's many guided meditations out there that can help you meet your spirit guides, but really it comes down to the intention to want to know who they are and to be open to connecting with them.
That's amazing.
That's so cool. So shifting gears a little bit, Lori recently lost her only teenage son, and so she's asking, like, what's the purpose of grief, and why do some die in traumatic ways and leave us with that devastation that comes after that?
Yeah, losing anyone is tough, especially a child, though. And what is the purpose of grief? Well, the purpose of life is to incarnate into this very real experience so that you can learn profound lessons, so that you can spiritually grow and evolve. That's the whole purpose for anything we go through. So think of it this way. It's one thing if you were curious about going over to Africa, right? You can read about it and you can hear about it, but to actually get on a plane and go walk the journey is a very different experience, and it has the power to change you and help you grow out of your comfort zone and deepen as a person. Well, the same with incarnating into this journey, and not just hearing about it through someone else, but walking the walk, like experiencing grief firsthand, changes you. It deepens you. It humbles you. And with that, there's a lot of wisdom that comes out of it. As long as, I always say, it always comes up in readings, when you go through tragedy like that and deep grief, it has the power to do one of two things: take you closer to faith and God, or further away from it, where we shut our hearts down and we stop living, right? And obviously, you're going to ebb and flow between the two, and you have to go through that dark night of the soul and be real about it and grieve. But at some point, it brings you to your knees, and hopefully you open your heart and you're vulnerable, and you call in and connect to that something bigger, which we call Source or God. And that has the power to transform your grief into enlightenment, and it takes you into a deeper place of love and faith and all of that. And so that would be my explanation. So there's a book, I feel like I'm supposed to tell you this in particular, Your Soul's Plan. I believe it's Robert Schwartz who wrote this book, but it's called Your Soul's Plan. I can see it in my mind's eye. Whenever I see a book, that's my guide's way of saying, hey, you wrote in this question, this might hold some deeper layers to that answer for you. Anyways, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. So the next question comes from Sharon, and she's asking a little bit more about like your experience as a medium. She was wondering when you started giving professional readings, and how did you know you were ready? And then as a second part to that, she's asking if you've ever misinterpreted message or not gotten clear information.
I love this question. So when I discovered it, I was 20 years old. And when I first gave a reading, I was 21. And I was terrified. And I definitely did not feel qualified. Oh my God. I was terrified. And my friend, Victoria, back in the day when I lived in West Bloomfield, Michigan, she forced me. She's like, I'm sending you my friends that you don't know, strangers, so that we can prove like you have this gift. And I know Victoria was sent into my life at that time to be my cheerleader, to get me out there, because I never would have done it. And so I just did it. I just felt the fear and I did it anyways. And I did the automatic writing back then, and I started channeling these messages, and they were blown away, and I was blowing myself away. And so, okay, that's that. So it took me a good 3 or 4 years, truly that long, to stop doubting every time for 3 or 4 years, because then it became like I stopped looking for advertising jobs, and I went into full-time committing to the universe. I said to God and my guides, God, you be my publicist, because I'm not going to go look for clients. You bring it to me, and I will gladly share this gift. And that is where synchronicity took over, and I got on the cover of the Detroit Jewish News, and phone calls came in, and the rest is history. Okay, so do I ever doubt my messages? Is that...
Do you ever misinterpret messages or not get
sure.
clear information?
Okay, so I always get divine information, as does anyone going into this with a pure intention, wanting to, with an open, pure heart, to be a messenger, to serve the greater good, to serve God and guides and source, right? So if you're going in with that intention, you have to trust after that who comes through and what comes through and how it comes through is kind of out of your control. But you've laid the boundaries for love and light, okay? After that, you pray and ask that your guides help you accurately interpret it. But sometimes you don't, that's getting out of your head. You want to basically get out of the way and trust. So I'll give you an example. I'm very auditory, so I hear things. So I'm hearing the other day Loretta Lynn. So I asked this woman, I'm like, who's Loretta Lynn? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, who's into country music? So I start going into my interpretation. The first thing I think of is country music, and I just know because my mom growing up loved her, and I don't know anything about this woman. I just know I heard it. And so finally she goes, I just don't know, and we're trying to make it fit. I'm like, no. Just sit with Loretta Lynn. But all I know is your mom in spirit is saying, mention that. She goes, oh, Rebecca, my mom's name is Loretta. So, right? So that was Spirit's way of playing the game of charades, saying, Rebecca, say Loretta. Mm-hmm. And so I absolutely can misinterpret. I always tell clients, hey, I never know what I'm getting. I know my language. I know what I'm picking up, but I never know what it means. You are going to be the best judge of what it means. I can help you. But the bottom line is, if you pray and ask your guides to help you accurately interpret it, hopefully that takes out some of the guesswork. But then just when you're working with clients, tell them up front, I know my language, I know when I get stuff, but I will put it out there and I'm going to ask you to try and help me make sense of what this means. Okay? Because sometimes Mickey Mouse can mean Disney. It can mean saying the name Mickey. It can mean you found a mouse in your house last night. There's all these different ways Spirit can, so it's honestly, it's like learning a foreign language. And it really is challenging in the beginning, but if you're trying to do this, I would encourage you to stick with it because it does get easier and you start to get kind of that base of the language down, and there'll always be new things Spirit's throwing in. That's just part of the deal.
Great. So Jody asks, she has two questions. In a reading, do you ever hear from anyone in someone's past life? So not just like in their family lineage, I guess, but in like past lives? So,
very rarely, because it's very hard for me to validate that to you. Mm-hmm. I could say I'm hearing from Henry from your past life in 1700, right. Greece. She's going to have to trust me on that. Like, yeah. Right? Yeah. But it would only happen if that soul was acting as a guide of yours and you never knew him in this lifetime. But yes, that has happened many times where I pick up a soul group member that you were within a past life but not this life is guiding you. And it's kind of hard to validate unless I say something that triggers this familiar feeling, and that's your soul telling you that's truth. So it does happen, yes, and that's pretty much it.
No, that makes sense. And then she knows it's important in the morning to protect ourselves with our white bubble of light and do all of that to prevent, or just to help ourselves with negativity and things. But she said she's wondering what else she can do to help stay on that side of positivity and light throughout the day.
Right. Lately, I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing this. It's really hard to stay high vibe in this frenetic, fear-based world that we live in right now. And I find myself having to redo my bubble like 100 times a day, truly. And the way I know it's worn off is if things are getting to me, or I'm getting like a nervous feeling in my solar plexus, anxious, I'm starting to like pick up on other people's stuff, and it's like I call it a sticky bubble. It's like it's on me. And so I'll just, I'll redo my bubble. So I'll visualize the light filling me up and around. And I shared this with you guys in a blog, the disco ball, where you have mirrors reflecting off all the dark stuff and shining your light out further. Okay, so other than that though, my guides always tell me, do things that raise your vibe. Listen to music that makes you feel good. Hang out with friends that make you feel good. Go for a run or a walk to ground. When you're grounded, you're less vulnerable to the negativity and the fear-based energy, right? So figure out ways that ground you and raise your vibe, okay? And it's going to be different for each of us, but then do more of that.
So this question comes from Becky, and she's kind of explained that she's been drawn spiritually to a few different animals, and she's wondering if there's a reason that we feel so drawn to certain animals. Are they totems, or is it maybe something else? She doesn't know how to interpret that.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times they're totems. You can't explain it. So my little 2-year-old messenger, she kept... there's a week where she kept showing me this book with this frog, and there was all these frogs on it, and I was like, what is she doing? And in that shamanic journey a week later, the frog was one of the things that came, and the healer that was one of the things she mentioned. She said with the rainforest, and she mentioned the snake and the frog. And frog to me is fully rely on God. It's the acronym. So anyways, I was like, okay, I have been noticing frogs. My daughter has been showing me the frog. It came up. So that I realized, it connected the dots saying, okay, got it. One of my guides is helping me to connect to God. That was the frog's purpose for me. So if you're noticing certain animals, yes, they're probably animal medicine. Native Americans, taught this. Look up, just research, what does this animal totem mean? And you will probably identify with it. And some people are just gravitate to animals. And so there's a lot of people on this planet who are truly here to work with animals in some way or another. So that could also be what's going on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, where did my question go? Terry wants to ask, when we have like a clearing done around us or in our space, when we've cleared stuff out energetically, can that make us physically ill? And if so, is there a gentler approach? And how do we know if we're like going too far in the clearing so that we don't get sick?
Yes, Terry, I love that you asked this question because I was on a radio show here, Thank you. I was on the Fox, the Rick Lewis morning show. And this came up because they had this awesome healer on that I worked with, and he was awesome. However, it was the only time he did a long distance healing on me, and it was the only time I ever got violently ill that night, and was purging all the stuff. And he said that was a common, don't be surprised if this happens. Well, he was right. It validated how awesome and powerful he was, but it was too much for me. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be, like, maybe I could handle it now. Man, I was toxic. And so if it doesn't, I think there's a gentler way to do it. And I've worked with so many energy workers and healers, and everyone has a different way of working. And I would just say, if that's happening for you, maybe you want to, it's up to you. Do you want to get in there and just do it and get it out? Or do you want to do it more gently? And you just have to decide. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. My feeling for you, Terry, is something's off. Like, you need to figure out a less severe way, because sometimes it causes us to shut down entirely because it's just too much. And so I would hate to see you abandon this, because I do feel like you're going through so much change right now, and you're shifting and purging, and I can almost see all these, like the onion, peeling back all these layers. So what I do is I'm like, God and guides, okay, I give this to you. Show me the right someone to work with me, or show me how to do it for myself. So it may not mean you need someone outside of you to facilitate it. You could do it on your own. But pray and ask, and then synchronistically the next day, somebody's going to call you and say, hey, by the way, I found this great healer. Or you're going to feel really inspired to sit down and meditate. Or when you go to bed at night, invite them in. That's the best way, you guys. When you go to sleep at night, ask them to work on you. Mm-hmm. Ask your guides and angels, because then you give them permission, and you go directly to source and through your guides and angels, and they can work with you while you're sleeping.
So this one came in live, and it's from Jody, and she wanted you to elaborate more on how she can find out more about her chart of life. I think she's talking about the blueprint that you refer to. Like, how can she find out more about that?
So that is something you would have to do in a guided meditation, where you travel to the other side and you go to the Akashic records. It's the hall of records where all of our past lives and future lives is stored. Okay. Or there's a lot of great light workers out there in this world, seeking out the right professional, a psychic. I don't know if there's I'm a medium. Maybe there's mediums out there who specialize in doing that. I don't. But I have heard of, there are definitely people out there doing this, where that's the session. You get on a phone or you get in their office, and they will take you and tell you, right now, they will tell you, I'm working with your guide, and your guide is saying this is about your lifetime, and we're going into your blueprint. And so, again, I don't know of any that specialize in that, but if you were to pray and ask God and your guides to show you that right someone, and that's the path you're supposed to take to find out more, that right someone's name will show up, I promise. Give it a few, I'd say just put it out there and give it a few weeks and see. Sometimes it takes a minute for the universe to catch up to speed with your intention. It doesn't always happen overnight like we want it to. So be patient with that, but you absolutely can access it. And then I feel like I'm repeating the same answer from the last question, but you can, when you go to bed at night. For me, that's my number one way, because I astral travel all the time. So I'm like, okay, guys, I need to understand what's going on in my life right now. I need to know what I signed up for, and remind me, because I forgot. And a lot of times I will have a vivid dream. It's not a dream. I left my body, I traveled, and I'm in a classroom. And the classroom, every time I dream about it, is me working with my guides and my soul group, reminding me of, my life's plan. So when you go to bed at night, perhaps try that.
That's a nice segue. This is also a question about dreams from Brenda, and she is asking about when we dream about people who are living. She knows when we dream about people who are dead, maybe it's a visitation or a message from them, but if we dream about someone who's living, is it also a communication or a message?
Yeah, so a lot of times, telepathically, we can connect with people who are alive, right? So you might have a sister who's one of your soulmates who lives halfway across the world, but in your dream state, you're meeting up. And I've had it happen where sometimes, people will tell me they had the same dream the same night, right? Well, guess what? You both were traveling and ended up meeting on the astral plane. So you telepathically, yes, you can tune into living or dead. There's no boundary with this energy, right? So you can connect to people and their energy in the dream state, even though they're still very much alive. We do that all the time.
Cool. So this will be the last question, and it comes from Jessica and Rose, and they're asking if there's a way that we can kind of pre-assign signs. Like, can we ask our loved ones before they die if there's a sign that they will give us, or is it only after they?
No, I had this happen all the time. That's great. So you make a deal with your loved one who's dying. Say, hey, if this is real, come back and say ice cream cone, or talk about the red hat, right? And so I'll be in a reading. I'll be like, I don't know why, but your mom is wanting me to mention a red hat. Like, oh my God, that's exactly what we agreed upon. And if they said that, we would know. And that happens because they're trying to carry out I told you it was real. And it's, I get why we do this. Even I do it. We are here in a body. Our soul knows its truth, but our mind gets in the way, and we start doubting, and we want reassurance. And so it's very powerful. I always encourage people, do that. Set up a sign so that when I'm thinking right now as I'm saying this, 1,000 examples. But I had this woman, and I guess red balloon was the sign between her and her dad. And I'm doing this reading, and I'm like, do you have a tattoo of a red balloon? And she lifted up her sleeve and was like, that. And that was our sign. And that I got it after he died because we agreed that would be the sign. So amazing when that happens. And it just further reconfirms in everyone's mind that we pick up where we leave off, right? So I'm sorry we're out of time. That went really fast. We're kind of in this time warp right now. I love talking about this stuff. So anyways, thank you for joining me. If you've never seen me live, if you're in Denver, I would encourage you, like, if this is like new for you and you're trying to experience this, I would say the best way for me to teach this work is to do the work and to get up on stage or get into a small group or get in on a one-on-one and let spirit get out of the way and let spirit use me and do the readings, because the work speaks for itself. It's like I'm saying, the red balloon, the validations speak for itself. It's very powerful. So if you ever want to come see me live in person, I have an audience reading on Thursday night, but I only think there's like 2 tickets left. Maybe that's for somebody listening. But I have another one coming up March 12th here in Denver through Temple Sinai. And they're just 2+ hours of me randomly reading the audience. And it's pretty powerful. Anyways, always small groups. You're always welcome to come see me. I would love to work with you. Small groups are awesome because they're, everyone gets a reading, and it's a small community that comes together and really connects on this. But other than that, keep coming back to this. I created this as a safe place for those of us who are awake, aware, and eager to ascend higher during this ascension time and to stay out of the heaviness and darkness and fear and rise up and into light and love. So I'm glad you joined me. Hopefully this just tuning in helped to raise your vibration. And thank you for doing the work and choosing to be a part of this with me. I hope to see you again next time. Until we meet again, brightest blessings and all love.